We want to be everyday mystics. We're not going to be everyday mystics if we don't start praying today.
I mean, that's what it's all about. Everyday mystic, meaning you're connecting with God in the ordinariness of your ordinary days.
Hey, I'm Father Mark Mary with the Franciscan Friars of the Renewal.
I'm Danielle Bean. I'm a wife and a mom and author of Whisper, Finding God in the Everyday.
And part of Team Ascension. Danielle, thanks for making the drive down to be with us.
I know, it's so fun to be here. I really enjoyed it. And my husband Dan and I got to stay in the friary. It's really been a wonderful experience.
Danielle, you recently wrote a book.
I did, and I happen to have it right here. So this is
You
Whisper.
Whisper. And so we're going to get into that right now, because the book, it's talking about praying. It's talking about finding the Lord in the everyday,
right.
in the ordinary, becoming an everyday mystic. Step one has got to be praying. And we know the audience, the viewer, wants to pray. Sometimes it's like, but where do I begin? What do I do?
Yeah. So if that's you, you're in good company. I want to pray. I know I should be praying. Or even just, I know I should be praying more. It should be a bigger priority in my life. So many of us are carrying these burdens on our spiritual life. And that's not what God wants for you. You know what he wants? He wants you to do the first little thing, the one little step in the right direction toward connecting with him, because that's what prayer is.
And Danielle, one of the reasons I'm really grateful to have you, wife, mom, professional, with us to talk about prayer is because I realize, like, as a friar, we have a pretty protected life. and so, like, we have a lot of freedom, and it's part of the privilege of the life to pray, and like, carving out time for it isn't as difficult. But for the mom with a lot of kids, with full-time work, it really costs, and it really takes a discipline. And so, like, could you kind of share some of your own wisdom about, like, starting to pray and how it's worked for you?
Yeah. First of all, I would just say, accept where you are. Sometimes we're putting up this big battle, like, because we don't like where we are in our spiritual life. And so we're like, I need to kind of get myself together a little bit before I can approach God, before I can begin to have a prayer life. We set all of these steps up in front of the first thing that we're going to do. So I just want to encourage you, if you are not praying at all, if that's not part of your life right now, or if you're not praying in the way that you feel like you should, just make that commitment to do one little thing. And now, what am I even talking about? People are like, I don't even know what to do. I'm like a deer in the headlights. Like, I don't know what to say. I don't know the formula. I don't have the right books or the materials. And just know, you don't need any special equipment to pray. Like, you have a human soul. So you have the right stuff. That's all you need for a connection with God. You're built for it. He made you for that connection with him. So just start with 5 minutes. I really encourage people, like, you have 5 minutes, start with 5 minutes. And put your phone away, go to a quieter place, close your eyes, and then put yourself in the presence of God. There it is. You're praying. Like, that's that simple.
We have this whole, like, poco a poco, little by little thing. And I remember as a teenager, the first time I was invited to the chapel to, like, pray. And I said, Our Father, Hail Mary, Glory be. And I was like,
I got nothing.
And now I live a life where we have 4 or 5 hours of prayer a day. And so it does start small and sometimes uncomfortable, kind of like when you just meet somebody, you're making, like, small talk. But as time, you do grow into it. The key, right, is actually starting. I mean, that's so important. Like, if you take nothing else away from this, start. Do the first thing, because that paralyzes us. Because I know I've experienced it where it's like, well, here's where my prayer life is, and I'm kind of embarrassed and ashamed of it. And here's where I know it should be. And you might have people in mind that you want to emulate, or these great saints, and you know these stories, and that can just paralyze you. And you know what? You know who loves that? Satan loves that. He loves when you are paralyzed and aren't able to do the first right thing. So just step out in faith and do that first thing. Accept where you are. Forgive yourself for wherever you are. God already knows all about it. And he's just longing to connect with you. So do that first right thing. And it can start with just 5 minutes of quiet, 5 minutes of stilling yourself interiorly, and just opening your heart and your mind to the presence of God. So once we've made the time, one of the first kind of discouragements, obstacles, is definitely probably going to be an experience of distraction. Like, I'm there, I'm quiet, and I'm thinking about everything but the Lord. Like, what do I do with that?
Yeah, so I think that this is a very common thing. You know, I have 8 kids, and they'll be like, I could never do that. Well, guess what? I didn't get 8 kids overnight. Like, it is a gradual process, and God very much works with you exactly where you are. I had a good girlfriend once who knew I was kind of following a running regimen. I enjoy running for exercise, and she was like, oh, I just love that. You know, I'd love to be a runner, but I tried it one time, and I just got so out of breath. And, you know, like, I was like, well, That's kind of part of it. Like, that's natural that you get out of breath, and there's that challenge there, that's part of the experience. Well, the same is true in our prayer lives. Like, if you're saying, I can't pray, I get so distracted, that's kind of part of it. Like, it's part of the human experience. Even the great saints got distracted in prayer. I find that so encouraging to know that that's not an excuse to walk away. When I get distracted in prayer and I make that effort, because it is effort to pull my mind and my heart back to the presence of God, that's a great gift that I can give to God. Because showing him that effort, showing that love, that perseverance, that discipline is really a great gift. So instead of looking at your distractions as a reason to just throw it all out the window, look at your distractions as an opportunity to give God a great gift of refocusing your attention on him.
As we're working the muscle of like stillness, of receptivity, of all of that, one of sort of the side effects is going to be now we're open to distraction as well, right?
Right.
And like you said, with running, like as you're working the running muscle, some of the side effects are going to be sore legs, shortness of breath. But it's like, okay, the more you get into it, the more you're kind of able to power through. The stronger, if you will, your running muscles get, your lungs get, but also the stronger your like stillness muscle gets.
Yeah.
And distractions are going to be there. But as we develop the habit, I do think we can also develop the habit of like recognizing them, taking note if we need to in some way, if it's an important thing, and then kind of reorienting, powering through. Yeah. Again, the key is like don't freak out when they first happen, and just kind of the discipline of like, okay, I'm gonna stick with this.
Yeah, that's important to note, because sometimes we think our prayer life should feel like all hearts and roses and like, oh, I'm up in the clouds with the angels and I'm just like floating out of my prayer time into the rest of my day. It's not about a feeling. It's about showing up. Like, that has been 100% my experience, that God will work with you and he wants to see that good faith effort of showing up. And I also like to remind myself that God doesn't need me to pray. We need to pray. It's for us. And rather than looking at it as another chore, another to-do, another thing that's burdening me, our Lord tells us, come to me, all you who are burdened, and I will give you rest. What a beautiful invitation that is to anybody who's burdened, feeling overwhelmed in your life. If you're one of those busy people with lots of noise and distraction, here's an invitation for something that's just for you, to rest in the Lord, to make time for that in your life. And not to feel like you have to have the right words or we're not putting on a performance for God. Like, you're not going to impress him with, your great eloquent speech that you're going to give to God. He wants your presence there. So sometimes just being still, and that's a countercultural thing, and being quiet is exactly where your prayer life should begin.
Yeah, and there's this whole thing, right? Like, unless the grain of wheat dies, like it remains only a grain of wheat. But if it dies, it bears much fruit. And entering into silence and that stillness and stopping the consuming and all that, there is a death to it, right?
Yeah.
Because it's not always easy, even the sacrifice of the time for it. But if we can sacrifice that time, if we can do the work of the discipline, of the sacrifice, of entering into that stillness, even though it can be difficult, right? Like that little offering is going to bear abundant fruit. And
right.
primarily in this relationship with the Lord, of allowing him to look upon us and to reveal to us again, like, who we are and who he is. And I know, again, like I started very small and it was very difficult and kind of not fun. And now like my prayer life is sort of the essential, the fundamental, like the most important part of my day.
Right.
But it doesn't happen overnight.
It doesn't. You need to be patient with yourself, and you need to show up. That, having this feeling like we need to put ourselves together before we approach God is sometimes a great obstacle. So just knowing that God knows all about where you are. He loves you exactly where you are. He knows everything about it, and he wants you to have a prayer life because he wants to be that support to you. He wants to love you. He wants to tell you who you are and remind you of your worth. And that can only happen inside of prayer life. And the first step is just to make that time for it. Make that time for quiet. Get past the discomfort of quiet, because we didn't even mention that yet. Like, some people, you say spend 5 minutes in silence and they break out in hives.
Yeah,
right? Like, that's not something that we like to do.
Yeah. Yeah. So the first step, the practical, the invitation is, what would you say is if you're not praying yet, commit to 5 minutes.
5 minutes. God will work with 5 minutes, and do not even tell me you don't have 5 minutes, because I know you do. You've got 5 minutes. So committing to that and starting there. And like you said, it's such a beautiful thing when you allow that space in your life for God to work. how he will work with you in that. You know, I've experienced that in my life where I'll go from, you know, having a very limited prayer life to making a greater commitment to it, and that God responds to that and he draws us deeper into that so that we can experience the love and the affirmation that he wants to give us. So we forget that. We think like prayer is something I'm going to do for God. Well, that's ridiculous. There's nothing we're going to do for God. You know, he doesn't need that. We need to make that space and time for prayer in our lives.
And Danielle, over the last couple of years with Ascension, definitely like my primary desire is to help people pray, you know, and just encourage it, because this is the most important thing that we need to. It's just a fundamental piece, an important piece, right?
Right.
And I'd say the most important piece. And so it's great to have, again, a mom, a lot of kids, who's lived it, who's experienced it. And so we do invite you to check out Whispers again by Danielle, which shares both her, which there you go, which shows it's both the fruit of your prayer, but also the wisdom of how to actually do it. And it's a really incredible and important resource. So check it out. The link will be down below in the description. Thanks, Danielle. Thank you for watching. We will see you again next week. Remember, we are pilgrims on this earth. Somos peregrinos poco a poco, little by little. Vamos a llegar. We're gonna make it. God bless y'all.
Bye-bye.